Celtic Myths and Legends by T.W. Rolleston. Chapter 5, Tales of the Ultonian Cycle, Death of Cuchulain. And that's the illustration. Near to Slieve Fuad, south of Armagh, Cuchulain found the host of his enemies and drove furiously against them, plying the champion's thunderfeet upon them, until the plain was strewn with their dead. Then a satirist, urged on by Louis, came near him and demanded his spear. It was a point of honor to refuse nothing to a bard. One king is said to have given his eye, and it was demanded of him. "Have it then," said Cuchulain, and flung it at him with such force that it went clean through him and killed 9 men beyond. A king would fall by that spear, said the children of Cuchulain to Louis, and Louis seized it and flung it at Cuchulain, but it smote Lag, the king of the charioteers, so that his bowels fell out on the cushions of the chariot, and he bade farewell to his master, and he died. And then another satirist demanded the spear, and Cuchulain said, "I'm not bound to grant more than one request on one day." But the satirist said, "Then I will revile Ulster for thy default." And Cuchulain flung him the spear as before, and Eric now got it. At this time, in flying back, it struck the grey of Macha with a mortal wound. Cuchulain drew out the spear from the horse's side, and they bade each other farewell, and the grey galloped away with half the yoke hanging to its neck. And a third time Cuchulain flung the spear to a satirist, and Louis took it again and flung it back, and it struck Cuchulain, and his bowels fell out in the chariot, and the remaining horse, Black Sanglend, broke away and left him. "I would fain go as far as to the loch's side to drink," said Cuchulain, knowing that the end was coming, and at that suffered him to go where he had promised to return to them again. So he gathered up his bowels into his breast, and went to the loch's side, and drank, and bathed himself, and came forth again to die. For Bay and the Queen Mauve. Now there was close by a tall pillar stone that stood westwards of the loch, and he went up to it, and slung his girdle over it, and round his breast, so that he might die in his standing, and not in his lying down. And his blood ran down in a little stream into the loch, and an otter came out of the loch and lapped it. And the host gathered round, but feared to approach him, while the life was still in him, and the hero light shone above his brow. Then came the grey of Macha to protect him, scattering his foes with biting and kicking. And then came a crow and settled it on his shoulder. Louis, when he saw this, drew near, and pulled the hair of Cuchulain to one side over his shoulder, and with his sword he smote off his head. And the sword fell from Cuchulain's hand, and smote off the hand of Louis as it fell. Then took the hand of Cuchulain in revenge for this, and bore the head and hand south to Tara, and there buried them, and over them they raised a mound. But Conall of the Victories, hastening to Cuchulain's side on the news of the war, met the grey of Macha, streaming with blood, and together they went to the loch's side, and saw him headless, and bound to the pillar stone. And the horse came, and laid its head on his breast. Conall drove southwards to avenge Cuchulain, and he came on Louis by the river Liffey. And because Louis had but one hand, Conall tied one of his behind his back, and for half the day they fought, but neither could prevail. Then came Conall's horse, the dewy red, and tore a piece out of Louis's side, and Conall slew him, and took his head, and returned to Emain Macha. But they made no show of triumph in entering the city, for Cuchulain, the Hound of Ulster, was no more. And so we see the problem in just living a life based around killing. Defending is one thing, but a life based around killing, it's going to go back. And we also see the foolishness of taboos and stuff to the point of, oh, I gotta save face. And even, oh, I know even once is ridiculous and it's not a risk I should put myself to, but they're going to